Okay, so the response when I posted the photo of myself and John and said, "Hey, I spoke to John Taylor today," I posted that up, and of course, I knew that people were going to go crazy, but a lot of girls went crazy. And when I got off the phone with him, or when I got off Zoom with him, I immediately called my friend Lisa Lee, who is the only other Duran Duran fan I know who's at the same level as me. I mean, I know a couple of others. My friend Maurice is a crazy Duran Duran fan too, but I immediately called Lisa Lee. And I was like, Lisa, we were FaceTiming. She's like, hey, what's up? I go, I want to show you something. And I turned the camera around and I showed her the screenshot of me and John. She's like, oh my God, no way. And it was just so fun to share that moment with her, because if you're a child of the 80s, Duran Duran were a big deal, and they still are a big deal. And they're one of those bands that really, really made an impact on a lot of us in the 80s. So it was just really fun to share that moment with her and to see her general enthusiasm. It was pretty magical. Hey, everybody. Welcome again to the Rockman Power Hour. This is our third episode of this awesome project that we've kicked off. And we want to thank you so much for your support. It's been heard, it's been seen, and it's appreciated. This has been an absolute dream of mine to do ever since I started interviewing people and ever since I started having conversations with interesting people. So to be able to do this in a long format and share it with you every week is an absolute dream. So again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for getting the word out. And we look forward to having all of you on this journey with us as we continue it. But I wanted to take a minute and thank our sponsor for this week, pophardcase.ca. Now, if you're someone who collects pops, and there's a lot of us out there that do, Funko Pops like this one over here, they're great, they're beautiful, but they need to be protected, especially if you're looking at one that might be a limited edition exclusive. And the folks at pophardcase.ca have made these incredible cases that fit pops absolutely perfectly. Look at this. You drop it in like that. You put this on the top and away you go. You are protected. You are in good shape, and your collectibles will stay nice and damage-free for years to come. So check out pophardcase.ca. Every pop that I own is in one of these, and I cannot stress enough how awesome they are. So go check them out. And if you go to their website today and use my discount code Rockman15, you'll get 15% off of your entire order, and it is not limited. You can order as many as you want. So thanks again to this week's episode sponsor, pophardcase.ca. I want to welcome my co-host, Ryan Stick, with me. Ryan, what's going on, bud?
Hey, I'm really looking forward to going back to the 80s, man. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah. We're gonna do that this week, and we're gonna go back there in a big way. This is crazy, Ryan, because I've been chasing this interview I've been chasing it hard for about 6 months to get this guest on the podcast. But I've been chasing the chance to talk to them for about 3 years since their last album came out. And then when Duran Duran announced that this new album was going to come out, their publicist reached out to me and some of the people that work with their label in Canada. And they said, would you be interested in talking to someone from Duran Duran? And I was like, absolutely. So the fact that we got John Taylor to be our guest this week on the podcast is unbelievable for me. I've been a Duran Duran fan ever since I'm 12 years old. I remember going to see them at the Montreal Forum in 1983 or 1984 on the Seven and the Ragged Tiger tour. And I never thought I would be speaking to John Taylor. And today we've managed to get him on the podcast. Now, are you a Duran Duran fan?
Dude, I gotta say, I'm a Duran Duran in a garden variety poser type of way where I'm aware of them and I know their music. But you said something in the interview that you're going to go talk about later, but I just want to go a little deeper in that. What was it like being a kid in the 80s and being a Duran Duran fan when it was kind of not cool as a dude to like Duran Duran? I got to know about that, because you're an individual who does what you want. So was a 13-year-old Rockman the same guy I see in front of me today, or were there some growing pains there?
Well, listen, I loved Duran Duran. I was a fan of Duran Duran, but there was definitely some guys in my high school that did not like Duran Duran. They thought that they were a bunch of pretty boys. They thought they weren't hard enough. You know, there was the guys that liked metal, and there was people that liked alternative music, but a lot of people felt Duran Duran wasn't alternative enough. They were too this, they were too that. But I always liked them because I always thought that they had incredible songs, and they always looked great, and they always looked like they were having the best time ever. I mean, if you watch the Duran Duran video, you know, for the video for Rio, I mean, they're on this sailboat in the middle of this beautiful location with beautiful women surrounding them, wearing cool clothes, singing as this thing's racing through some beautiful sea somewhere in the Mediterranean. What's there not to like? But I think the hate that came towards Duran Duran from a lot of guys was just pure jealousy. I mean,
yeah,
right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Dude, I couldn't watch a Leonardo DiCaprio movie for years just based on how every girl in my grade just worshipped him. And I was just like, well, what's this guy got? And then later on, I could just really appreciate he's an amazing actor. But yeah, I couldn't get past the pretty boy jealousy back then.
See, I never had that. I always just liked their music. And what I like about Duran Duran is they went through a lot of trials and tribulations as a band. They went through a period where they were super hot and then they were super cold, but they stayed together as a unit. At least the three core members did. Some people left, some people came back, but they've endured and they've always put out quality music, and they've never been scared to kind of not reinvent themselves, but to try new things. So every time Duran Duran puts out a new record, I'm excited. And I'm really excited about this new album. I've had a chance to listen to it. It is exactly what you would want from Duran Duran. So the chance to talk to John Taylor on this podcast is a dream come true for me. And I'm not going to hide it. I mean, I was very, very not nervous in a bad way, but I had great, you know, when you talk to someone and there's someone you genuinely like and you get this good nervous energy. That's exactly what I had the day leading up to this interview. So I was like a little kid. I was really, really excited.
Awesome, man. So you want to check out this interview now, or should we leave the folks waiting? I don't know.
I think we should go right to our guest right now. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this conversation with John Taylor of Duran Duran. All right. Really, really happy to have with me on the Rockman Power Hour a guy whose band I've loved for years. And it's just, I got to tell you, it's honestly a big, big pleasure to be chatting with you today, Mr. John Taylor. How are you?
I'm good, Jason. Thanks.
So my era of Duran Duran is 83. I mean, I was 12 years old. So you imagine a 12-year-old kid, how much of an impression a band like Duran Duran makes on you. And I remember there was a group of kids that if you liked Duran Duran and you were a guy, you were a loser. But if you were smart, you liked Duran Duran because all the girls liked Duran Duran. But there was so much more to this band than just this thing that everybody got caught up with. At the root of it were some incredible musicians writing really, really good songs. And what I love about Duran Duran is that as time has gone on, that's what people are looking back on more, are the songs. You know, the whole mania that everyone got caught up with is kind of gone off to the side, and people are realizing that, you know, you were a monster bass player. Simon was an incredible singer. Nick was a great composer. So just that whole unit was just great musicians. So happy to have you here today with me. And I just wanted to let you know all that stuff.
I feel the interview's done. I think you've said everything that I was going to say.
I'll just let you go on about your day. So let me ask you, sitting here where you're at now, putting out a new album, how does it feel to release a record like Future Past now?
Yeah, albums are never been easy to make. You know, they're always challenging. You know, there's a core belief that we have in each other, and the possibilities that we have that are there every time we go into the studio. But you know, it's a mountain to climb. I mean, you know, in a creative sense, you know.
Right.
So you know, when we get to the end, you know, we have that thing, you know, and I'm still kind of into, you know, atomic product. You know, when we have that thing and we can hold that bit of vinyl or that CD, you know, it still feels good. You know, that's the business that I'm in, is, you know, churning out, you know, that stuff. And when we all kind of can feel good about what we've created together, then it's worthwhile.
And you guys have been on a pretty good run of being fairly consistent with releases. I mean, Paper Gods 2015. I know it's been a bit of a stretch between those two, but I think it would have this one would have come out quicker if the world wouldn't have fallen off of the axis.
Yeah, I mean, strangely enough, I think the album's has turned out better for the break that we took. We were March of last year. We were aiming at a summer release,
right?
Really, all hands on deck, trying to get the thing finished, but really at each other's throats, and it wasn't a fun time, and and fate intervened, and everyone went home. We went into lockdown for about 9 months. Nothing was really done. Going back to the music after that time, and the experiences that we'd all had. I don't know. I feel like I went back to the project a different person. I mean, it was not possible to get through last year without changing in some way. I mean, I mean, it just made you look at your life differently and put things in a different perspective. And I feel like when I went back to the album, I had a much more pragmatic sense of, listen, this is our job. We have to get this done. We've got to be part of the recovery. I was in America for most of last year, and I really came to appreciate what live music does for what music of any kind does for people. It's a great leveler. It brings everybody together, and we need to have things that we can come together over, dumb things like dumb songs that we can dance to dumbly, just look at each other stupidly, and it's okay. And it's okay if you vote for the other guy. We can have that moment together. It's a very humanizing sort of moment. So I kind of felt like, let's just get it done. And so, then we came back together around about Christmas of last year, and we just knuckled down. And and it's good to be a part of. If you feel, I think it's almost impossible not to feel part of this zeitgeist in a way. Just because everything is so intense culturally right now. And I feel that this album does have a place in it. I mean, we didn't, and this is by no means is this a knock at Sir Elton, but we didn't have to put ourselves in masks on the cover of this album. But I feel that the COVID experience is sewn into the DNA of the album in a way.
I think like a lot of music that's been recorded in troubling times, it does come across. I mean, you look at all the stuff that came out in the late 60s. There was so much stuff that was going on culturally, politically, and it's almost like we've got a snapshot of that era. And I think this COVID, situation that we've been in, a lot of the music that's going to come out that is, was made before, during, and after is all going to have a bit of that effect on it. Yeah. But I think it's really important what you're saying. This is what people need now. And it's amazing how everyone went back to the things that comforted them. We've all been, music's kind of been, let's face it, music's kind of been put to the side a bit. I mean, it's always important, but the value of music, has just been devalued a bit. But I noticed a lot of people went back to saying, wait, this is important. This is what gets us through hard times. This is what brings us together. So yeah, it's almost like music's been put back under the microscope in a positive way.
Is that because we had more time to ourselves?
I think so. And I think it might be because, I know a lot of people that were digging out boxes of stuff during the last couple of years, digging through memories, spending time with family members, having conversations face to face, and just being able to talk about other things besides what place they needed to get to next. So, I mean, I think music is important with memories. It's important with, again, timestamps on times of your life. So yeah, I think it's a good time to be a music fan again.
Yeah. I mean, also we found that was interesting. A lot of the songs on the album, I mean, unusually for Duran, are kind of about intimacy issues, long-term relationship issues. I was tempted to say identity politics, but not really. But but it's just sounded good. And that really came out of something that Simon was living with before we went into lockdown. That when we came back to review, they seemed to really speak to to what was going on. Songs like Invisible, for instance,
right.
the song Future Past. A lot of what is going on is really like, asking each other, who are we? What have we become? Who are we to each other? Really sort of like staring at each other, eyeballing each other and trying to understand. I mean, it seems to me like it doesn't matter how long you live with someone. You still wake up in the morning, you go, who are you?
Yeah.
Because you're like, and who am I?
Yeah.
Because we're changing all the time. And last year was like an acceleration of all of that.
Yeah.
We were asking so many questions of ourselves. And I was really, and again, it's like, it wasn't like the album was written to that. But when we looked at the themes and the subjects and the lyrics that we had thus far, when we came back to finish the album, we were like, wow, really like, let's lean into this. Whereas perhaps before we might have been, is this a little heavy for Duran? Do we need to get a little lighter?
Yeah.
And it just felt like, no, this is good. This is right. This is right for now.
Yeah, and it's true because Paper Gods had a really fun vibe to it. It was really, really a fun record. And Future Past does feel a little bit more. I can now that you're saying that, I get it, because when I listen through the record, and I mean it just comes out like first three songs like bang bang bang. It's just it hits you over the head, and then it kind of goes it tapers off a little bit in terms of tempo and stuff. Then again, this goes back to what we were saying. Everything is going to have affected this music. And there's a reason why it might have come out the way it did.
Yeah. I mean, when I guess when we were into 3-4 months into COVID, I mean, I remember thinking there wasn't like artists, musicians, whomever, didn't seem to respond. There didn't seem to be an immediate response.
No.
In fact, at one point, the only artists that had responded, I think Dylan put out like a 10-minute long song. And the Stones put out like a 7-minute long song.
Yeah.
They were the only artists.
Yeah, right. Right.
And, but, it does take a while, for things to sort of gestate, and sort of, I don't know, condense, if you like, before something of sort of real value gets said. It's also like everybody's having such different feelings, even in conversation, right? You're loath to tell someone how you're feeling about things because they could be feeling entirely differently. I think everybody's, we're all so sensitive at the moment, because we're all kind of inside ourselves a little bit more than usual. And at least I know I am.
Yeah. and it's true what you said. I remember being a kid, and when there were these big things that would happen, the musicians would band together, and there was something, we'd have a We Are the World. We would have something that would come together and would band everyone together, and you'd feel like the musicians were there. But that was kind of lacking a bit this year. I didn't feel like someone, where's our anthem for COVID? Where's our,
right.
Where's our, we're going to get through this. So yeah. And I don't know if that speaks to the era that we're living in, where everyone is really wrapped up in themselves. But I know from my point of view, I'm used to living a certain way where people say, look, you've got to follow this guideline and you got to trust it and it's going to be okay. And you don't know how things are going to end up, but you just kind of have to have a little bit of faith. So for me, being locked down and being told, well, you got to do this, I had no issue with it because I'm used to following directions. So I was like, hey, I'm going to just take this downtime as time to maybe spend a bit more time with my kids. Maybe, dig into some music I haven't been able to listen to, maybe watch some movies I haven't seen. So it worked out for me, but I know a lot of people that had a lot of issues with it.
Sure. Yeah.
You were really proactive with the bass tutorials, and this was really neat because you're a monster bass player. Let's face it. I mean, you might get left out of the conversation sometimes, but you're a really good bass player. And to be able to break down some of those bass lines from some of those songs for bass players, I'm sure was a treat. How much fun did you have doing that?
Yeah, well, I had fun until it wasn't fun anymore. It started out, I mean, my wife and I were doing them together. I mean, she was filming it, and I never really felt like I had the technique to do a serious master class, but I like the idea of sort of creating a narrative around a song, and sort of, and as a as I was saying, I would preface it by saying, this is about the creation of a song from the perspective of the bass man, and what role I played in in how the song kind of came together. And it was really interesting, and it definitely it helped me understand the songs. I came away from the songs actually with a new level of respect for like the parts that Nick had come up with or what Roger was doing. And, but of course, typically, perhaps overambitious, I'd decide, each week I would launch the tutorial with an Instagram live with a guest that I was doing an interview with. And then, I'm sure you understand this, after a few weeks, it all became about, who can we get next week? Who can we get next week? Of course. Well, why didn't you call so-and-so? Why didn't you call? And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be, that's not what I want to be doing. I mean, I did 6, I think, and they were like, they were like a little meal in themselves. And then it was like, done, next, move on. It definitely served. I felt I had COVID quite early on, and I had COVID kind of before it became as scary as it became.
Sure.
And so I felt it sort of beheld me to put a bit of positivity out there and say, hey, look, I had it and I'm functioning. And I'm like, so I wanted to do something that, that gave to that fund, if you like. But yeah, it was good to do.
You worked with Nile many times. Obviously you're a fan of Nile's work. What was it like when you first started working with Nile? Was it intimidating at all? Was it just, no, was it just immediate? Tell me, I want to know.
There's nobody I've never worked with Quincy Jones, but I imagine, Nile and Bernard also, but Nile's like one of the easiest men in the world to get along with.
He seems like he's pretty genuine.
And his approach in the studio is quite simply, I'm the shit, I'm happening. If you're in the room with me, our shit is happening.
Okay, there you go.
It's never a struggle. There's nothing ruminatory. I've worked with a lot of other producers where there's a lot of this going on.
Yeah.
Chin scratching. But not with Nile. He's, doom, 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 and when we first worked with him on the music that became the Notorious album, and God, did we need him, because the band was in a state of disarray. We knew Roger had sort of stepped away. We didn't really know what Andy was doing. He was messing us around. We didn't know whether he was coming back or what. But Simon, Nick, and I, knew we wanted to get back on track and get back in the groove of making a new Duran Duran record. And and Nile as the producer on those sessions was just fantastic. We couldn't have wanted for someone better. And the connection was genuine, and we were young when we made that connection. I was, when I connected with Chic's music, when everybody else was, into punk, and this little light bulb went off with me, and I listened to, I forget whether it was Everybody Dance or one of those songs, and I thought, I like this as much as I like Anarchy in the UK.
Yeah.
and what's more, like, I can hear that, and it guided me towards bass playing, and little did I know that was going to sow the seed for a relationship that was going to, last for the rest of my life, and there was something so cool about us being these guys from the Midlands of England that were able to connect with, the kings of New York dance music.
Yeah. And he really brought a funky, dancey side out of the band that's kind of stayed there since.
Well, yeah. The first thing he did with us actually was the remix for the Reflex, which was the sort of third single off the third album. It was like the third album was kind of like, it wasn't doing as well as Rio had been doing. It was like the ship was kind of, have we lost it, and because you're as good as your most recent single, when you're in that phase. And we asked him to do a remix of the Reflex, and and he just he moved music forward a little bit with that.
He slaughtered that mix. It was amazing.
He just got the synclavio, which was this, next level sampling tool, like rock, and so for him it was like, oh, this will be a really fun opportunity for me to test out the synclavier. I mean, the rest is Duran Duran history.
Right.
So then Notorious, which was, I think we did well. Yeah, then we did Wild Boys with him as well. I mean, it's, and we've maintained friendship and and love, respect, with him ever since. He's a remarkable individual.
It was on 7 in the Ragged Tiger that I saw you guys. And I remember there was some kind of an effect that happened where it was almost like in the Reflex video with the water. I remember you guys did something, and it was I've never seen anything like that live. There was something that happened in front of the stage, and it was just like, it blew my mind. And you guys tended to really push the envelope live as well. I mean, there's a very, very big visual aspect to this band. Let's face it. I mean, this band pushed, not only did you push music, but you pushed what you could do with a band visually. I think it almost went from, the Beatles did it, and then you guys did it. And there was a real big gap in between. I'm talking the visual aspect of the band. You guys.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an art school element to what we do, and that we always have done. I don't know. I mean, I've always been attracted to music, like that myself. Artists and that have a strong visual signature, if you like. Or the glam bands that I got into when I was a kid, Bowie and Roxy Music, Queen, and then subsequent, I mean, even punk rock actually, at the time was incredibly visual. I mean, the clothes that those guys were wearing, that the Sex Pistols, that Vivienne Westwood was making, that the Clash were paint splattering their clothes with paint a la Jackson Pollock. I mean, there was always a super strong visual identification. For us, that was always going to be a big part. I always loved projections.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to go and see the Human League, and they were doing this, like they were having these projections going on, which was, I think they'd gotten from like the Velvet Underground or something like that. And so all of these things, were always going to be a part of our presentation. That's just, it's who we are. It's the way we were raised.
and it's continued with the band too. I mean,
it has. I mean, fortunately, we're a creative crew. I mean, like Nick is very, very creative. He's very hands-on when it comes to screen content, for example. He's, you can almost let him get on with that, and he'll check back in and say, "Oh, I thought, what do you think about that or that?" And he's got it. I tend to get to the end of an album. For me, like making albums, the writing and recording of the albums are exhausting. Right. And I get to the end and somebody's saying, "What are we going to do for a video?" I'm like, I don't care. Whatever.
So that's never been really your department. You just kind of always gone with the flow.
I mean, I've never been that. I've never really cared that much.
Right.
I've always thought, I mean, what do they say? Like the music is the hill that I will die on,
right.
But like the videos, packaging are not, I know that it's going to be interesting. I'm not leaving it to, any old schnook. I know that those guys, Nick in particular, is going to do a great job. And, it's really important to him. I mean, there's a lot of like, I mean, actually, I'm thinking about, just as we were agreeing on the album art. He reaches for his vinyl copy, but this album artwork. Oh my God! I mean, talk about, there was food thrown. I mean, I say metaphorically, that food was thrown across the room as we were like discussing and trying to agree on what on what it was going to be. But oh man, yeah. I mean, there was a lot, because. Well, it's very personal, isn't it? It's very personal. I mean, and we don't make a lot of albums. It's not like we're churning out shit. You're
not an album a year kind of band.
No. So when you do, put something out, you want to feel proud of it. You want to be able to stand by it. Yeah. And everybody's got an opinion.
Has there ever been a visual aspect to the band or a component that's come out that exists in the universe now that drives you crazy? There's got to be something. There's got to be a 12-inch single, a CD Max single, something.
Oh man, I don't like the military uniforms. It was around about tail end of the first album,
right?
That's one that, like, if I could like have that, like X'd out of history,
you would do it. How did you feel when these came around?
Oh. Funnily enough, I
have all of them, by the way. You sit right next to Swan from the Warriors. So
that's so funny. I was in a record store in Austin, Texas, and they had like 20, and they were all Andy. Did
Funko send you a set?
Yeah. No, I don't think I've got a set.
But you got you.
I think I've got 2 of me somewhere, although I probably passed them on.
Did you guys have a laugh? I mean, how much did you guys have to do with that? Or was it just like they came to you?
I think we had about this much to do with it. Yes, fine, send.
But did you have a laugh when you got it? I mean, it is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it is. I mean, I mean, we did a lot of fun stuff when we were growing up, I mean, board games and stuff. I mean, there was a lot of merch back in the 80s, and merch that we had no control over, stuff that was just happening at the time. And I'll come up for that.
It's all good. This is the beautiful thing about doing stuff at home, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was so much great stuff, and I certain things that I really like the board game, for instance.
Right. Yeah, I still can't find one of those.
Right.
But listen, I'm excited because I'm glad you guys are still making music. I'm glad you all seem to be in a really good place as a band for the last little while, and it seems like every band that I speak to that gets a second round or a second shot at it, or a new appreciation for it, that kind of weather that storm and come out on the other end, all kind of say the same thing. We're just appreciative that we can still do it. So
I would say that for sure. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Nobody, we so love to, change the narrative, with hindsight, but I mean, I think we would all agree that we had no clue, and probably wouldn't even felt we would deserve it of, a career of this length. I mean, we had what it took to make an impact, in the early 80s.
Yeah.
But I think, really the career has been, like that period that we were discussing earlier, where two members of the band, 2 out of 5 just fall away, leaving 3 going, holy shit, what are we going to do now? And figuring out how to survive, saying, you know what, we're not going to, and somehow by, someone said to us, just by sheer bloody mindedness sometimes, but sometimes that's all you've got,
and and I know it was very, very short, but that period you spent with the Power Station, I mean, that was a monster band. A monster band. So,
well, it was a monster record for sure.
Yeah,
the songs were really fantastic.
Thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. It's nice to connect, and I wish you nothing but continued success, and continue doing what you guys do, because you bring a lot of joy, and you really help people out, not only over the years, but especially over the last little while. I've talked to so many people that have gone back to old Duran Duran records. I've had conversations, my kids grew up on it, and they're 14 and 17. So when I told them I was chatting with you today, they were pretty excited. So it whatever you're doing it right. So continue doing it.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Man, how cool is that?
What a nice guy, man. Seriously, like I have no Leonardo DiCaprio pretty boy hatred for him at all. No.
And he, listen, he's really nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think he's very aware that he's in a legendary band that a lot of people still hold very, very near and dear to them. So it was really, really fun to talk to John Taylor, and his reaction when he saw his pop was hilarious. It was like he could tell he was a little uncomfortable with it. And I'm sure when Funko approached them and said, we'd like to do pops of Duran Duran, I'm sure they were just like, what? the hell is a pop? You could tell that it was just like, but that's the thing with them, with a lot of bands, bands like Kiss, bands that were heavily marketed when that license was made available to people, everyone was they were pushing stuff out for these bands, everything, Lunchbox. You name it, they were doing it. So.
Well, let's not forget that board game you guys were talking about, which now I think is some legendary board game. I've never heard of a Duran Duran board game, but I have no doubt in my mind that they probably had Duran Duran underpants and toilet paper and everything else during their heyday.
I was kind of hoping that when we finished the interview, he was going to go, let me get your address, I'll send you one of those board games, but that didn't happen. I did want to take a second, though, again, to thank our sponsor for this week's episode. And it was perfect because, we did talk about Funko Pops during our interview. We have got the opportunity again to thank pophardcase.ca. And as you see, this is the John Taylor pop that I had in the interview with myself and John. It is in its hard case, and these are great. So if you're ever looking to protect your pops, I cannot recommend pophardcase.ca enough. And if you go to their website right now and use my code Rockman15, you will get 15% off of your entire order. And that code will be there for quite a while. So take advantage of it and feel free to protect your pops, because we all know, Ryan, when these things get shelved after a while, what they do is they pull them out of production, and then they get vaulted, and then pops go up and they go up and they go up. So to have them in a hard case like this, it's the simplest thing to put on and off. But it just gives you peace of mind. If there's ever anything that happens in your house, you're protected with a pop hard case from pophardcase.ca. So thanks again for being a part of this week's episode. Ryan, we've talked about Duran Duran a little bit, but for you, after listening to that, did it make you want to go out and listen to more of their catalog? What did it do to you?
Well, first of all, I checked out the Duran Duran official YouTube page, in which all these bass tutorials are, and it was really cool to hear the parts. But at the same time, when I listened to Duran Duran, I can pick out instruments, but now I really focused on the bass playing, and then remembered that back in the day it was analog and he had to get it right. So all these monster bass lines he was playing, especially in Rio, there's a lot of bass playing going on in Rio.
Great bass player.
He really, really is. Like, what a talent, what an underrated talent. And another thing I really liked about Duran Duran is I always assumed that they were like this one-hit wonder and Hungry Like a Wolf was their thing. But then as I was doing some research and I type in Duran Duran, the first song I see is Come Undone. And that has 128 million views, as opposed to Hungry Like a Wolf that has 13 million views. So Come Undone is their biggest song ever, and I had no idea. So that's pretty amazing, because they are definitely not a one-hit wonder.
Oh, no.
If that's the case. No.
They're definitely a career band. They've always put out good records, and they're great live. I've seen them live probably 5 or 6 times, and they always, I've seen them quite a few times. So they always put on a good show, and it was just an absolute pleasure to have them on the show. So I want to thank again everyone that helped make that happen. The folks over at Six Media, and just it was great. So I'm very excited that we were able to have John with us, and it just sets the table for everything else that we're going to be doing on this show. We've got some really crazy people lined up for the next few weeks. It's nuts. So
you just told me who they are. I'm just like, oh my God.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. So again, thank you so much for joining us. It's so much fun to be able to hang out with you every week. Please do me a favor, okay? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you knock off that little bell that'll tell you when a new episode is up on YouTube. And if you're streaming this on your podcast streaming device, just subscribe and make sure you get alerted. We put up new episodes every Friday at 12 o'clock. And we're excited to be doing this. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Again, I would like to thank our guest, John Taylor. I'd like to thank my co-host, Ryan Stick, who is, I need you here next to me, man. If you're not here, it's like, I don't know. It's just not the same.
I'm just in the background playing with buttons that don't exist.
No, but it's always good to have you here, and I'm looking forward to having you more involved with some of our guests as we have them on. I want to thank our producer Julia Kajerski for helping us out with everything. I want to thank DMC and my friend Brett for that great theme song, and for everyone else involved, and our sponsor for this week's episode, none other than pophardcase.ca. Make sure that you get a pop and you slam it into one of their cases, because then you can rest at night knowing it will be perfect and in pristine shape. And use my code Rockman15 to get 15% off. That's pophardcase.ca. Until next week, I'm Jason Rockman, and this is my co-host Ryan Stick. This is the Rockman Power Hour, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.